Springs, California, and our Way to a Wonderful Life message for today is titled, The Spiritual Law of Assumption. The Spiritual Law of Assumption. Now, the word assumption, if we go to the Webster's Dictionary, they've got four different definitions. One is something taken for granted, a supposition, a correct assumption. Two, the act of taking for granted or supposing. And three, the act of taking to or upon oneself. And four, the act of possession of something, the assumption of power. Now, the word assumption was not part of our language until 1,250 to 1,300 years after the year of our Lord. And this word was not used by the Mastermind Jesus, but as we know from his instruction to pray believing that you have, that this was an instruction to assume possession of the thing we desire to experience in our lives. Assumption is also inherent in the words of the psalmist when he declared, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Now, this spiritual principle is the key to all answered prayer and has been demonstrated throughout history. Inherent in Jesus' instructions is that we begin to think about what we can believe to be true for ourselves, what we can believe to be true for ourselves, and how much we are willing to accept for ourselves, and how much we are willing to accept for ourselves. The law of assumption is not a secret or something new, but a tried and true spiritual principle that works for everyone, everywhere, and for all time. For everyone, everywhere, and for all time. The Mastermind Jesus revealed the living Spirit of God within him when he said, "Father, I know that you always hear me. I know that you always hear me." And in these simple words, we realize through faith that we can make the same assumption. Just as we read in the ancient scriptures, he listens to our heart. God listens. God, infinite spirit, intelligent power, listens to our heart. And the mystical Ernest Holmes writes in his book, "Remember, God is the silent power behind all things, always ready to pour into our experience that which we need. We must have a receptive and positive faith in the evidence of things not seen, the evidence of things not seen with the physical eye, but which are eternal in the heavens. All is spirit, and we must provide a receptive avenue for it as it passes out through us into the outer expression of our affairs." Now, as we assume, that was from the mystical Ernest Holmes, as we assume that we have the health, the happiness, the wealth, and the success that we desire, we are magnetizing our faith and letting faith become the power that it is. We read in the scriptures, faith is the substance of things hoped for. And this substance is power, it's chemistry, it's magnetic, it's ideas, it's all the unseen things that move through our mind, and it draws to us through our faith all things that are necessary for our good desires to be made manifest in our lives. We must never let the idea of faith be diminished in our mind. We must never let the idea of faith be diminished in our mind. Faith is a power, and when we assume faith, we can assume the good that we hope for. We assume faith consciously by recognizing that we have it and that we have all the faith necessary to activate the reality of our assumptions of good and more good. Now, so many people write to me from all over the world and tell me, oh, they don't have the faith. If they just had more faith, well, we have all the faith that we need, but we must stop saying we don't have enough faith. We must stop saying that our faith is not powerful, or that we don't have the same faith as other people. We all have access to the same level of faith that Jesus had, that Isaiah had, that Jeremiah had, that Matthew, Mark, Luke and John had, that all the greats in the world have ever had. We all have access to it. And the Mastermind Jesus tells us if we have faith the size of a mustard seed, now in the Holy Scriptures it tells us the mustard seed is the smallest seed, but it's not. But it is so very small that if you put it on the palm of your hand, and if you wear glasses and you take your glasses off, you probably won't even see it. or if you just breathe lightly on it, it'll fly off and you won't be able to find it. That's how small it is. Jesus said if we have faith the size of a mustard seed, we can move the mountain into the sea. Now, did he believe that we wanted to move mountains into the sea? Absolutely not. He was telling us that we can do bigger things, greater things. We can do those things that we have faith in, that we can do, that take nothing away from anyone else nor diminishes anyone in any way, shape, or form, including ourselves, because we're in alignment, we're in tune with the infinite good when we know that that good that we seek is ours, that God has made it available to us by bringing that desire for it into our awareness, into our awareness. In Him we live and move and have our being, and in us, God is desiring to express a greater good, to express some more health, more joy, more happiness, more peace, more prosperity, more money, more everything that gives us that feeling of being one with all the good, one with the good that God has prepared for all of us so that we can all have enough to share and to spare. Now, many highly successful and wealthy individuals throughout American history have declared bankruptcy. Abraham Lincoln, Henry Ford, Walt Disney, Milton Hershey bars, and Donald Trump, or companies that bear their name. All of these people are recognized by us as successful, and other than President Lincoln, we also recognize them as wealthy as well as successful in achieving their goals. But far too many of us let our seeming failures or disappointments defeat us and block us from mentally and emotionally and sometimes spiritually from advancing forward. Henry Ford, Walt Disney, and Milton Hershey all knew that they had something to offer the world that was better than what they had offered before. And this assumption was an advancing idea in their mind that caused them to act on their ideas, even though they had experienced what the world would call a failure. But to them, it was merely a misdirection of their idea and not the idea itself that had failed. And this can be a lesson for us all. So often when people lose their job or face a loss, they seek to restore rather than seek more. They seek to restore rather than seek more than they had before. When we are stopped in what we are doing, either by a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, or the loss of a job, it is a sign that we must assume more than before. We must assume more than before. This is that law of assumption, that spiritual law of assumption that Jesus has given us for all of us. We must assume a greater success, and we must assume a greater consciousness of wealth and financial abundance. When Jesus said, "All that the Father hath is mine," He looked out upon the world and saw the great abundance that God has made manifest for us to use and to create the abundant life that is ours to assume, Can we take those words into our mind and personalize them to ourselves? What are we thinking about today? What is our state of mind today? If somebody would ask us, what is the image and likeness of ourselves that we hold in our mind? What is the idea that we have about ourselves? What would be that idea? What would be that idea? Are we still looking for that mustard seed faith? Are we still thinking that we don't have enough faith? Are we still thinking that other people have faith, that other people have the money, other people have the success, other people have the luck, L-U-C-K, luck? Luck is a fantasy word. It's a fantasy word. We draw to us that which we accept in consciousness. We draw to that which we believe to be true for us, and luck has nothing to do with it. The great Neville wrote a book titled, "Your Faith is Your Fortune." Your faith is your fortune. Even if we don't read the book, if we understand that my faith is my fortune, and we put that faith to work in the thinking of the greater things, the greater health, the greater wealth, the greater joy, the greater success, the greater loving companionship, the greater happiness, the greater peace and harmony and love and beauty that's available to us, that we accept it as being a part of our life experience, then we shall find that our faith has made us a fortunate person in a greater way. Raymond Hollywell wrote a book titled Working with the Law. Now, he's talking about the spiritual law. He says, crowd out all inferior thoughts by superior thoughts. Crowd out all inferior thoughts by superior thoughts. In other words, if you think you have a little faith, say, I have a great faith. I have a powerful faith. I have the faith that can move the mountain into the sea. I have the faith that does big things. And let that move through your mind. So crowd out, let's go back to Raymond Halliwell. Crowd out all inferior thoughts by superior thoughts, evil thoughts by good thoughts. What are evil thoughts? Evil is anything that diminishes life, diminishes our life. Evil is just live, spelled backwards. Live, spelled backwards. We're here to live this life. We're not here to exist. We're not here to be going through life just letting everything bounce off us like we have no control, that we have no power, that we're helpless and hopeless to take charge of those things that concern us. Evil is just live, spelled backwards. Or the joy of life, darkened by the clouds of depression and the feelings of inferiority, the feelings of not having, the feelings of being alone and helpless and hopeless. God is always with us, so we're never helpless, hopeless, or alone. And it's the Father that doeth the work, Jesus said. So get the idea out of your mind that you could ever be alone. Put your faith to work. Activate that idea, that truth, that you are with God, that God is with you, that in Him you live and move and have your being, and in you God is desiring to experience that greater life through you. Let's go back to Halliwell. Crowd out all inferior thoughts by superior thoughts, evil thoughts by good thoughts, ugly thoughts by beautiful thoughts, distressing thoughts by pleasant thoughts, and you will begin to overcome the growth of all negative and confused states of wrong and discord. In other words, learn to think constructively of all persons, all things, all events, and all circumstances. Appraise them from the ideal point of view, and as you do this, you will gradually transform your whole existence for the better. These are the means whereby you may steadily promote your welfare and advancement. As you train yourself, you don't have to worry about anybody else, as you train yourself to mentally look for the good, you will move towards the good. As you train yourself to look mentally for the good, you will move towards the good. And as you form higher and larger conceptions of the good, higher and larger ideas of the good, these elements will begin to find expression in your words, in your acts, in your character, in your person, in your talents, in your powers, in your attainments, and your achievements. That is, all things in your life will commence to improve as a direct result of your improved thinking. This process does not imply, however, that you are to ignore the wrongs of life, the empty places, and the undeveloped states of being, but that you are to think right through and beyond them, toward that hidden good, that unseen good, or the principle within that is ever seeking a higher and fuller expression. In other words, that good desire that God has brought to your awareness. You will therefore cease to condemn, cease to criticize in a destructive manner. Instead, you will seek to bring out the good in yourself and in all others, and to discover and develop that greater possibility everywhere. Now, Halliwell's instructions call us to assume the good, the greater and the better, no matter what has happened or is happening in our lives. The conditions and circumstances in which we find ourselves is a reflection of what we believe to be true for ourselves. But just as a reflection in the mirror can change quickly, so can what we believe to be true for ourselves. The spiritual law of assumption follows our mental and emotional assumptions, just as the laws of gravity follow our every physical movement. Let us begin to assume a life that is advancing towards greater health, greater wealth, greater success, greater joy, and greater love in all things that concern us, and let us know with the apostle that when that which is perfect comes, that which is imperfect comes to an end. When that which is perfect comes, that which is imperfect comes to an end. And how do we know when that perfect comes? We know because we have perfected the idea of who we are and what we're about. We have perfected the idea of our success. We have perfected the idea of our prosperity, our wealth, our loving companionship, perfected the idea of our creative expression, our career, our talents, our abilities. We have perfected those ideas in our mind, and we believe them to be true for us. And at that point that we absolutely believe them to be true for us, and we don't waver in that truth, we don't waver in that belief that those things are ours to have, to do, or to be, we shall receive them. We shall receive them. Let's go back to those words of the Mastermind Jesus. Father, I know that you always hear me, and in these simple words we realize through faith that we can make this same assumption. And what is God hearing from within us? Is God hearing that I am successful, that I am happy, that I have enough to share and to spare, that I'm enjoying this thing called life, that I'm realizing the truth that life is a gift, that's not a test, and that I'm not feeling tested, I'm feeling gifted every day? Are we accepting that within our mind, our heart, and our soul? Are we letting let truth move through us as vitality and radiance, as a zest for life? Are we letting that happen in our mind? Because it always happens in our mind first. Always happens in our mind first. Let's go to that mystical Ernest Holmes. Let's look at these words again. Remember, God is the silent power behind all things. Remember, God is the silent power behind all things. He's just rephrasing that statement of Jesus, that it is the Father that doeth the work. The Father works, and then I work. God knows the way, and God takes us on that way to a wonderful life when we put our mind in tune with the infinite good, in tune with that good desire that comes to our mind and our heart, and begin to accept it as ours. So remember, God is the silent power behind all things, Ernest Holmes tells us, always ready to pour into our experience that which we need. We must have a receptive and positive faith in the evidence of things not seen with the physical eye, but which are eternal in the heavens. All is spirit, and we must provide a receptive avenue for the spirit to move through our mind, our heart, and our soul, and let it pass through us into the outer expression of our affairs, into the conditions and circumstances in which we live. So we take those words to heart in our mind and say, I believe this for me. I believe that I do have that faith the size of a mustard seed and more, that I can call forth in my mind that good desire that God has placed in my heart, that good desire that moves through the images of my mind, that good desire that forms that likeness of it through my divine imagination, and I can receive that good. I can receive that good, knowing that that good is complete within me, that I have accepted it fully and completely right now, right where I am. And those words of Jesus take on a whole new meaning. The Mastermind Jesus said, thy faith has made thee whole. So what is the wholeness that we want to see in our finances? What is the wholeness that we want to see in our health? What is the wholeness that we want to see in our career or our employment? What is the wholeness that we want to see in our relationships? What is the wholeness that we want to find within our heart, our mind, and our soul about those things that concern us, so that we can perfect those things that concern us and realize that when that which is perfect comes, that which is imperfect, that which is willy-nilly, that which is whimsical, that which is taking me out of the state of knowing into the state of daydreaming and fantasy, thinking fortune and luck has something to do with my life. When that which is perfect comes, that which is perfect comes in my mind, that which is perfect comes, that which is imperfect goes away. That which is imperfect goes away. So let's start bringing that perfection into our mind every day in every way that we can think of. Start allowing ourselves to believe so that we can receive that greater thing. So crowd out Raymond Hollywell, in his book, Working with the Spiritual Law, tells us, crowd out all inferior thoughts by superior thoughts, evil thoughts by good thoughts, ugly thoughts by beautiful thoughts, distressing thoughts by pleasant thoughts, and you will begin to overcome the growth of all negative and confused state of mind and let go of all that thinking about what is wrong in your mind and start realizing and fulfilling that desire that is within you to that which is right for you right now. And so it is. Amen. Once again, I want to thank